Specialist Lena Carter never believed silence could feel aggressive. But in this jungle, silence wasn't empty. It was watching. It was waiting for her to make the first mistake. The insertion had gone wrong within seconds. One moment she was inside the transport aircraft, checking her gear with calm precision. The next, warning lights flickered, the aircraft shook violently, and comms exploded into static. Then came the voice. Cold official final. Mission compromised. All units extraction aborted. Lena didn't panic, she never did. But even trained soldiers feel that one moment of realization when control slips away completely. She tightened her harness as the rear hatch blew open automatically. Wind roared into the aircraft, violent and alive, swallowing everything inside. Carter, someone shouted behind her. She didn't look back, because looking back doesn't change anything in survival situations. It only wastes time. She jumped. The jungle rose up to meet her like a wall of black-green teeth. Her parachute deployed with a violent snap, jerking her body upward before dragging her down again. Rain slammed into her face in thick sheets, blurring everything into shifting shapes. Below her, nothing but endless canopy. No landing zone. No beacon. No team. Just terrain that didn't care if she lived or died. Impact came hard. She hit a slope, rolled through mud, vines whipping across her arms and face. Her parachute tangled in the branches above her, tearing away into the dark canopy like a disappearing ghost. For a few seconds, she just lay there, listening, waiting. No gunfire, no voices, no rescue. Only jungle sounds, thick, layered, and disturbingly coordinated. In training, they taught her how to identify wildlife, birds, insects, predators. But here, it didn't match anything she knew. Even the insects sounded too synchronized, too rhythmic, like something mimicking nature instead of being part of it. Lena pushed herself up slowly. Check gear. Breathing steady. Heart controlled. She forced discipline over instinct. Rifle intact. Ammo limited. Radio cracked, useless static. Emergency beacon dead. She stared at it for half a second longer than she should have. Then she shut it off. No point broadcasting a signal into nowhere. Or worse, broadcasting it to something else. A gust of wind moved through the trees above her. The jungle responded instantly. Not randomly. Not naturally. Coordinated rustling. Like something had taken notice of her arrival. Lena slowly scanned the tree line. Nothing visible. But that didn't mean anything. In environments like this, visibility is a lie. Sound is the truth. And right now, the sound was shifting around her. Circling. She crouched low, weapon raised, and began moving forward. Slow, controlled, minimal noise. Every step was calculated, heel to toe, weight distributed, avoiding dry branches. Her training kicked in like muscle memory overriding fear. But fear was still there. Just contained. She passed a fallen tree covered in thick moss. Something scratched deep grooves into its bark, wide, curved marks. Too deep for a small animal. Too deliberate for random movement. She paused, ran her fingers lightly over the grooves. Fresh. Very fresh. Then, a sound behind her. A soft drag across wet soil. Lena spun instantly. Rifle raised. Nothing. Only darkness. But now she knew. She wasn't alone. She started moving faster. The jungle began changing as she advanced deeper. Not visually. Behaviorally. The wind shifted direction too often. The insects grew quieter in patches. then suddenly returned in waves. Even the trees seemed positioned unnaturally, like corridors forming paths that weren't random. She stopped again. This time, her instincts screamed louder than her training. Wrong. Everything was wrong. She checked her compass. It spun slightly before stabilizing. Magnetic interference. Or something worse. A low vibration passed through the ground. Barely noticeable. But real. Lena crouched, placing her hand on the soil. Another vibration. Then silence. She exhaled slowly. Okay, she whispered, that's new. Then she heard it. A distant scream. Human. Cut short abruptly. Her grip tightened. If there were survivors, they were either targets or bait. She looked up toward the canopy. Rain thickened again, louder now, heavier. And through the storm, a faint light. Red. Flashing. Emergency flare. But it wasn't standard military timing. It was irregular. Intentional. A signal. Or a lure. Lena stared at it for a long moment. Everything in her training said, do not approach unknown signals in hostile environments. But everything in survival said, light means information. Information means life. She adjusted her rifle and started moving toward it. The deeper she went, the more the jungle felt constructed rather than grown. She found broken equipment half buried in mud, metal plates twisted unnaturally, a helmet cracked clean in half, not from impact but pressure. Something strong enough to crush armor. She exhaled slowly. No natural predator does that, she muttered. Then she saw footprints. Human. Fresh. Moving toward the same flare. She followed them. Carefully. Quietly. Until the jungle opened slightly into a narrow clearing. And she stopped. Something was wrong. The clearing was too clean. Too open. Too exposed. In jungle environments, clearings like this are rare and dangerous. They usually mean one thing. Something cleared it. Recently. The flare was there now, stuck in the ground. Still burning. Still active. But no sign of who launched it. Lena stepped forward cautiously. Her finger rested near the trigger. 1 step. 2 steps. Then, a branch snapped behind her. She turned instantly. Nothing. But now the flare flickered. Once. Twice. And then, it went out. Darkness swallowed the clearing completely. Total blackout. Lena raised her rifle higher. Her breathing slowed. Controlled. Focused. Then she heard it. A voice. Not through radio. Not through distance. Close. Too close. You shouldn't have followed the light. Lena froze. And slowly turned toward the sound. Something moved between the trees. Not fully visible. Just shape. Just intent. And then, it stepped forward. The voice didn't echo. It didn't fade. It stayed in the air like it belonged there. You shouldn't have followed the light. Lena Carter didn't move. In survival training, stillness is sometimes louder than action. Movement reveals position. Panic reveals weakness. But stillness can sometimes confuse a predator. Except this didn't feel like a simple predator. This felt like something that understood silence better than she did. Her rifle was already raised. Safety off. Finger steady. Breathing controlled. Her eyes scanned the darkness between the trees where the voice had come from, but the jungle refused to give her shape, distance, or certainty. Only suggestion. Then the flare's dead smoke drifted sideways, against the wind. That was wrong. Lena noticed it instantly. Wind direction hadn't changed, but the smoke did. Something was interfering with the environment itself. A second later, a slow movement passed between the trunks. Not fast, not aggressive, intentional, like it wanted to be seen this time. Lena adjusted her stance. "Show yourself," she said quietly. No answer, but the jungle answered for it. A low, grinding sound rolled through the soil beneath her boots, like something massive shifting underground. Her instincts fired instantly. Move now. She stepped back. The ground where she stood a second earlier collapsed inward. Not naturally. Not like erosion. Like something had opened beneath it. A trap. Or a mouth. Lena fired one shot into the collapsing hole out of reflex. No reaction. Only deeper darkness. She backed away fast, boots sliding over wet leaves, eyes locked on the surrounding trees. That's when she saw them. Scratch marks. Not just on one tree. On many. All around the clearing. Fresh. Deep. Encircling. She had walked straight into a perimeter without noticing. A containment zone. Her breathing tightened slightly, but her voice stayed calm. "Okay, not wildlife," she whispered. "This is coordinated." A second voice crackled through her broken radio. Static first. Then clarity. "Carter, do not engage. Repeat, do not engage alone." Her eyes narrowed instantly. "Identify yourself," she said into the radio. Static returned. Then silence. Then nothing. Her jaw tightened. No friendly signal. No known frequency. Just interference timed too perfectly to be accidental. Something was manipulating communication. She shut the radio off completely. Useless now. The jungle had already replaced it with its own language. Movement. Sound. Pressure. A rustle erupted to her left. Lena snapped her rifle toward it. A shape moved. Vast. Low. Too fast to identify clearly. It wasn't charging. It was circling. Testing angles. Learning her position. Her grip tightened. "Come on," she muttered under her breath. "Let's see what you are." The shape stopped. Then another appeared behind her. Then another to the right. Not random. Not scattered. Surrounding. Her breathing slowed further. She was being boxed in. A classic containment tactic, but animals didn't usually coordinate like this. Which meant only one thing. Something was directing them. The first attack came from above. A sudden drop. Lena reacted instantly, rolling forward as something heavy slammed into the ground where her head had been seconds earlier. She turned mid-roll, firing a single shot upward. A scream tore through the canopy. Not animal. Not human. Something in between. The thing crashed through branches, disappearing into the darkness with violent thrashing sounds. Lena was already moving again. She didn't stay in one place. Ever. A second attacker lunged from the side. She pivoted sharply, bringing the rifle stock up as impact hit her shoulder. Pain flared, but training suppressed it instantly. She drove her elbow into its side and created distance. Now she saw it clearly for half a second. Not fully animal. Not fully human. Thick limbs, wrong posture, skin layered like hardened muscle rather than fur. And eyes that tracked her with unnatural focus. It hissed and retreated. Not injured enough. Still evaluating. Still hunting. Lena exhaled sharply. Experimental or modified, she whispered. Another rustle. Closer. Louder. The jungle itself felt like it was tightening around her. Then she heard footsteps. Human. Or something pretending to be human. A voice came again, this time not from radio, not from distance. From directly behind her. You adapt quickly. Lena didn't turn immediately. That was intentional. You never turn your back too fast in a situation like this. You confirm, you control. Then she pivoted sharply. And saw him. A figure standing between two trees. Uniform fragments visible. But not standard issue. Mixed gear. Unmarked patches. Face partially obscured by shadow and mud. But the posture. Military. Experienced. Dangerous. He raised one hand slowly. Not aggressive. Observing. Lena kept her rifle trained on him. Who are you? She demanded. He tilted his head slightly. Like he was analyzing her instead of answering. Then he said something that made her blood slow just slightly. You weren't supposed to survive the first hour. Silence followed. Heavy. Controlled. Lena's eyes narrowed. That depends, she replied, on who planned my death. A faint, almost unreadable smile appeared on the man's face. Not who, he said, what? Before she could respond, a roar exploded from deeper in the jungle. Not one creature. Multiple. Approaching fast. Coordinated. The man didn't move. But his tone changed. Lower. Urgent. They found us. Lena stepped back slightly. Us, she repeated. But he was already turning. And now, he said, you're officially part of it. The jungle erupted. Branches snapped. Multiple shapes surged forward from all directions. Not random. Not wild. Organized. Lena raised her rifle instantly. Explain now, she shouted. But the man was already moving into the shadows. Run, he said. And then he vanished. Lena stood alone again. Surrounded. And the jungle finally stopped pretending. It was no longer hiding. It was hunting. Night didn't arrive slowly in the jungle. It dropped. Like someone turned off the world. The last trace of daylight vanished behind the canopy, and the jungle immediately changed personality. Sounds sharpened. Shadows deepened. Even the air felt heavier, like it had gained weight just to slow her down. Lena Carter stood in the center of the clearing for exactly 2 seconds after the man disappeared. That was her mistake, because stillness in a place like this is never neutral. It is an invitation. A low rustle spread through the vegetation. Not random. Not scattered. Directional. Coordinated. Her grip tightened on the rifle. 5 rounds left. Maybe 4 if she miscounted earlier. Not enough for a firefight. Barely enough for survival. Then the first shape moved. Vast. Low. From the left. Lena fired instantly, one controlled shot. A scream tore through the jungle. Something went down. But the sound of impact was immediately replaced by movement from 3 other directions. She turned sharply. Second shot. Another hit. But the jungle didn't slow. It adjusted. That's when she understood the worst part. They weren't just attacking. They were learning her rhythm. Lena moved backward toward the ridge she had passed earlier, boots sliding over wet soil. She didn't run blindly. Running gets you killed faster in terrain like this. Controlled retreat. Always controlled. A third shape lunged from above. She ducked hard, felt claws swipe just above her head, and rolled under a fallen log. Her shoulder slammed into wood. Pain flashed, but she ignored it. Survival doesn't negotiate with pain. It overrides it. She came up on the other side and fired again. Click. Empty. Her chest tightened for the first time. 3 rounds left. Now the jungle felt closer. Not physically. Strategically. It was closing angles. Blocking exits. Forcing movement toward one direction. A funnel. She realized it instantly. Not hunting, she whispered, guiding. A sudden explosion of movement to her right forced her toward the ridge path. She moved, because hesitation was no longer an option. The ridge was worse at night. No visibility. No cover. Just uneven terrain and deep drops on either side. But elevation meant advantage. Or at least delay. Lena climbed fast, using hands and boots, grabbing roots and stone edges. The jungle behind her erupted with movement, branches snapping, bodies pushing through vegetation like a wave. They were pushing her upward. That wasn't normal predator behavior. That was coordination. She reached a broken stone structure at the top of the ridge, half collapsed, covered in moss and old metal reinforcement. Man-made. Military. Or something older. She crouched behind a fallen pillar and reloaded quickly. 2 rounds left. Maybe 3 if she got lucky. Then she saw it. The bodies. 2 soldiers. Lying near the structure. Not scavenged. Not dragged. Placed. Intentionally. Their weapons were still in their hands, but useless, bent, crushed. Lena moved closer slowly, scanning for traps. One of them had a radio still attached to his vest. Static pulsed faintly. Alive. She reached for it. A voice cracked through immediately. Not static this time. Clear. Distorted. But human. Carter, if you can hear this, don't trust the perimeter. Her eyes narrowed. Identify yourself, she said into it. A pause. Too long. Then. This is not rescue. Repeat, this is not rescue. A sharp crack of movement behind her cut the transmission. She turned instantly. Too late. Something hit her hard from the side, sending her crashing into the stone pillar. Her rifle flew out of her hands. She rolled on instinct, pulling her knife mid-motion. And then she saw it. Close. Too close. The creature wasn't fully animal. Its body moved like a predator but with structure, almost engineered muscle groups, reinforced joints, unnatural symmetry. Its head tilted slightly as it studied her. Not rage. Not hunger. Recognition. Lena kicked hard, forcing space, slashing upward with her knife. It reacted fast, too fast, but she still cut across its arm. Dark fluid sprayed. It didn't scream like an animal. It hissed like something processing damage. Then it retreated half a step. Evaluating. Learning. That was worse. Because now she knew. It could adapt. Behind it, more shapes emerged onto the ridge. Not rushing. Advancing in formation. She grabbed her rifle from the ground, rolled behind cover and fired. 1 shot. Hit. Another shape stumbled. But the remaining units didn't break formation. They spread, surrounding her again. The ridge was no longer an advantage. It was a cage, and she was inside it. Then, a sound cut through everything. A flare igniting in the distance. Bright red. Above the lower jungle canopy. Lena froze. That same flare. The same irregular signal. But now closer, much closer, and worse. It was moving. She looked down the ridge. A narrow path descended toward a darker section of jungle where the flare pulsed again. Like a heartbeat. She exhaled slowly. "This is a trap," she muttered. No response from the jungle. Because it didn't need to respond. It already knew what she would do. The creatures began tightening the circle again. No rush now. Just pressure. Forcing her decision. Stay and be surrounded. Or move into unknown signal source. Lena adjusted her grip on the rifle. 2 rounds. 1 knife. No backup. No extraction. She looked toward the flare. Then toward the surrounding shapes. And made her choice. "Fine," she whispered. "Let's see what's worse." She moved. Down the ridge. Into the darkness. The jungle didn't chase immediately. That was the strange part. It waited. Like it knew she was still inside its design. The path downward felt unnatural. Too clean. Too open. Like something had cleared it deliberately. Branches leaned away from her as she passed. Wind stopped entirely. Even insects went silent. The jungle wasn't resisting her movement anymore. It was allowing it. That realization made her stomach tighten. She reached the bottom of the ridge and stopped. The flare was ahead. Burning steadily now. Illuminating a small clearing. And in that clearing, something was waiting. Not moving. Not hiding. Just standing. Lena raised her rifle slowly. Her voice was barely audible. "What the hell is this place?" The figure didn't answer. But the flare behind it flared brighter. And the jungle behind her closed in. The flare burned red in the center of the clearing like a dying heartbeat. Not steady. Not natural. Intentional. Lena Carter stood at the edge of the trees, rifle raised, body perfectly still. But every instinct she had was screaming now. This wasn't a survival zone anymore. It was a designed space. A controlled environment. And she had just walked into the center of it. The figure stood near the flare. Not attacking. Not retreating. Waiting. Lena adjusted her aim slightly. "Step away from the light," she ordered sharply. No response. The jungle behind her had gone quiet again, but this time it didn't feel like silence. It felt like containment. Like a door had just closed. The figure finally moved. Slowly. Deliberately. It raised its hands just slightly. Not surrender, not aggression. Recognition. Then it spoke. And this time, the voice was different from the one before. Calmer. Controlled. Human. "You made it farther than expected." Lena's finger tightened on the trigger. "Who are you?" she demanded again. "Answer clearly or I fire." A pause. Then the figure stepped slightly into the flare's light. And Lena saw him fully. Military uniform, modified, layered with gear she didn't recognize. No national insignia. No unit markings. Just a black patch on the shoulder with a symbol she had never seen in official records. But it was the eyes that made her freeze for half a second. Not fear. Not confusion. Familiarity. Like he had seen this exact moment before. "I'm not your enemy," he said. "That's what enemies always say," Lena replied instantly. A faint exhale, almost like he expected that answer. Behind him, the jungle shifted again. Not loudly. Not visibly. But she felt it. Pressure changing. Surrounding tightening. He noticed her reaction and nodded slightly. "They're closing in," he said. "We don't have time for moral debates." Lena didn't lower her weapon. Then talk fast. The man pointed toward the ground near the flare. You saw the file, he said. Lena narrowed her eyes. What file? A pause. Then, a subtle vibration came from her gear. Her broken radio. It wasn't dead. It was reacting. The man spoke again. Project Nightfall. Lena's expression hardened instantly. The jungle. The coordinated attacks. The engineered movement. The controlled lighting. It wasn't random. It was testing. Military experiment, she said quietly. The man shook his head once. Not military, he corrected, not anymore. A sudden growl erupted from the trees. Louder this time. Closer. The jungle was done waiting. The man stepped closer to the flare, voice urgent now. They didn't just build weapons here, Carter. They built systems, adaptive ones. Lena's mind processed it fast. Too fast. The creatures, she said slowly, they're not animals. Another growl closer still. The man nodded. Biological frameworks with neural coordination layers. They learn, they adapt, they remember. Lena exhaled slowly. So I'm not fighting wildlife. No, he said sharply, you're fighting infrastructure. The jungle behind her erupted. Not chaos. Direction. Multiple shapes moving in synchronized patterns, tightening the perimeter. Lena shifted her stance. How do I get out? She demanded. The man looked at her for a long moment. Then his answer hit harder than any attack. You don't, he said, not unless the system releases you. A beat of silence. Then Lena laughed once. Short. Cold. That's not a plan. The man's expression didn't change. It's the truth. A sudden movement behind her forced her to pivot. One of the creatures lunged from the shadows. Lena fired instantly. One shot left. The creature collapsed mid-charge. Silence returned for half a second. Then the jungle reacted. Every direction, every shadow, everything moved at once. The final phase had begun. The man grabbed her arm suddenly. Now, he said, decision time. Lena jerked free. I don't take orders from strangers in a death zone. He stared at her, and then said something that stopped her completely. You were never supposed to be alone here. A pause. Then, the extraction team was eliminated before you even hit the ground. Lena went still. That hit differently. Not fear. Not shock. Calculation. Then why am I alive? She asked. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the flare. It's choosing, he said quietly. The jungle roared again. Closer now. Lena tightened her grip. So what now? She asked. The man stepped back into the flare's glow. Now you do what no one before you did. Lena narrowed her eyes. And what's that? He met her gaze. You survive long enough for it to make a mistake. The jungle exploded forward. Everything moved at once. Lena reacted instantly, rolling, firing her last round into the nearest attacker. The shot landed. One down, but more replaced it immediately. The man moved beside her now, not fighting like a soldier, but like someone who had done this too many times. Left path, he shouted. There is no path, Lena fired again, switching to her knife as another shape got too close. Yes, there is, he yelled back. They allow it. That didn't make sense. But she followed anyway. Because survival isn't about logic. It's about patterns. They ran through collapsing jungle corridors that seemed to open just enough for movement, then close immediately behind them. The system was guiding them, Not trapping anymore. Processing. They reached a narrow ravine where the jungle noise dropped sharply. The man stopped suddenly. Lena almost collided with him. "What now?" she demanded. He looked up. And for the first time, he looked afraid. Not of the jungle, but of what was beyond it. "This is the core zone," he said quietly. Lena followed his gaze. A hidden structure beneath the roots. Metal. Dark. Alive with faint red pulses. Not ruins. A facility. Deeply integrated into the earth. And above it, the jungle itself moved like a single organism. Lena whispered, almost to herself. "This isn't a battlefield." The man finished her sentence. "It's a brain." A sudden silence fell over everything. Then the structure below them activated. Red light spread through the roots. The jungle stopped moving entirely. And a final message echoed, not through radio, not through sound, but directly through the environment. Calm. Controlled. Final. Subject Carter, evaluation complete. Lena's eyes widened slightly. The man stepped back. "No," he muttered. The jungle began to close in. Slowly. Precisely. Lena raised her empty rifle one last time. "I'm still here," she whispered. The system responded. "Then let us see if you can remain." And the jungle went dark.